I have a ritual that I strictly follow since 1994. One playthrough of XCOM UFO Defense every year. And I usually hate repetition, but this horribly unbalanced little gem of a game somehow never gets old. Its modern sequels are mostly good games too, and I like them. They are much more streamlined and focus on other aspects, like more individual soldiers. But the original XCOM and its direct successor, Terror from the Deep, hit different for me. They are grueling, broken messes that give you no quarter and feel a bit like the Dark Souls of turn-based tactics. The first in line, XCOM UFO Defense, nearly never existed at all. It was cancelled without the dev team ever finding out. They only learned the truth 20 years later, and yet here we are. Today you'll see why this peculiar game has such a special place in my heart and that of many others. It basically is an Earth defense simulator. It's 1998. UFO sightings are spiking, people are getting abducted, and every nation's attempt to deal with the threat independently has failed. So the world's major powers quietly meet in Geneva and agree on a last resort, a secret internationally funded defense and research organization called XCOM. That's you. Here's how it works. The game has a strategic layer, where you manage your organization on a global scale, and a tactical layer where you're commanding your soldiers to perform the actual missions. Let's first play a bit so you can get a grip on how the game functions before I go into the details of why I love it so much. At the start, we need to pick a location for our main base. I tend to set up camp in southern Russia near Novosibirsk. The radar covers a large portion of the global landmass this way, and we need all the coverage we can get. Let's call it Nichivo. Nothing happening here, comrade. Go home to wife and kids. We have several hangars with a troop transport and 2 interceptors, a radar system, stores, living quarters, a lab, and a workshop. Let's check out the available soldiers. Their faces aren't even shown in the stat screen, and they cost only $40,000 to replace, which is good because you'll be doing that a lot. Your initial recruits have horrible aim, and only the slightest mistake allows the aliens to mow them down relentlessly. Save scumming is an option, but we're not doing that here. Mostly. You're also forced to go through each recruit to weed out the physically unfit or the feeble-minded, because stats like bravery are static and won't increase over time. Low bravery makes them prone to getting mind-controlled, and you can't have that happen to your demolition guy with a rocket launcher right in the middle of a mission for obvious reasons. After setting up the squad, we need to expand our base. Large radar system, more storage space, an additional laboratory, and a second living quarters. Then we wait. The first UFO we spot is like a gift from the universe. It just lands near our base, which means we don't even need to scramble the interceptors. Landed UFOs are great because if you're careful and don't excessively use explosives, rocket launcher reconnaissance is a thing in UFO, you can pull a lot of salvage from them. And we'll need as much as we can get. Because if you don't advance fast enough, the aliens will outpace your research and you'll be sending your squads with conventional weapons against enemies with heavy plasma rifles. Ask me how I know. So, onwards to victory, soldiers. Always remember, you're irreplaceable and the future of humankind rests on your heroic shoulders. After loading some more equipment on our Sky Ranger, the standard troop transport, we're dropping right on top of the aliens on landing site 1. It's nighttime, which sucks because we can't see anything and the aliens see everything. Our first wave consists of our most important recruits, the so-called expendable squad. It's just semantics, don't worry. You're the proud first line of defense and will be addressed accordingly as the heroes you are, even if, against all odds, you don't make it. While the expendable squad proudly sacrifices itself for all humankind, our named troopers are picking off the aliens from within the Sky Ranger. In the end, there's just one of them left, huddled to the left of the transport. A well-placed shot from Bridget takes care of it, and the mission is a success, even without having to breach and board the UFO. Since we've been out of heroes anyway, we're more than happy to hear that and head back home. As you probably noticed, the action system relies on time units rather than on a few action points. Everything takes time. Priming a grenade, changing a mag, kneeling down, changing direction, and of course walking itself. This gives a lot more fine-grained control over the action, which leads to these razor-sharp moments where you just barely squeeze off one last shot, and if it had missed, everyone would be dead. The strength level of each soldier also limits the load they can carry. On top of that, the more equipment a single person has, the more energy, which is another stat, is burned while moving. So sometimes you need to let them rest a turn or two, which obviously slows down your advance and limits your options. Here's what I think what makes this game special. It starts hideously difficult and gets easier as you go. That's the opposite of what most games do. Instead, they usually ease you in and ramp up the difficulty to keep the pressure up, right? XCOM just front loads the suffering. Your first few months are a war of attrition, with soldiers arriving in the same requisition screen as ammunition and equipment. The geoscape clock never stops, which conveys a sense of urgency. UFOs are attacking all over the globe, governments are losing faith, and your funding gets cut off if you don't perform. The invasion never waits for you to be ready and always moves on in the background. In the early game, people die so much that a Game of Thrones cast looks sheltered in comparison. But here's the thing, as your research advances, the balance shifts. Until that happens though, unhinged heroism needs to continue. Over the next missions, we learn that sometimes it's better to use the rocket launcher even in tight spaces, so that missing or hitting doesn't make a difference. Also, loitering above a landed or crashed UFO until it's daytime helps a lot, since our soldiers then actually can see things properly. We lose more heroes during an Arctic operation, but our named soldiers gain stats and confidence along the way. The UFO was heavily damaged though, so we can't salvage any engines or navigation equipment. But we're ready to research the laser rifle now, which has unlimited ammunition and better accuracy than our standard rifles. While waiting for the research to finish, we hunt down some more UFOs. Once your interceptor's caught up to one, a minigame pops up where you can select different attack patterns. With long-range missiles, your interceptor stays outside the weapon range of a small UFO, but it might be able to outrun you, which is exactly what happens here. Our second interceptor gets the job done though, and shoots it down during an aggressive attack with its short-range cannons while taking some minor damage itself. Later, just as he steps out of the Sky Ranger, another one of our valiant heroes finds an untimely end. But so does the alien. After unfortunately shooting another one of our heroes, it walks near a proximity grenade and blows its own ass back to Mars. More recruits arrive and get screened immediately, while we still wait desperately for the laser rifle research to finish. The cool thing in general about XCOM UFO Defense is every campaign tells a different story. Not because the game has good writing, it barely has any, but because the systems are loose enough that things just happen. You don't plan the proximity grenade moment, for example. The game just throws situations at you and you deal with them. 30 years later, it still manages to surprise me. What makes it even more absurd is that the entire game ran in 2 megabytes. Graphics, music, AI, everything. Your phone's camera produces larger files than that. And yet, somehow it generates a different story every time you play. Part of the reason for that is the alien AI, which is one of my favorite things about this game. Julian Gollop, the guy who made it, openly admitted that the aliens weren't programmed to play optimally. Randomness was deliberately baked in, so they'd occasionally do something super stupid or unexpected, instead of always making the rational move. And that's exactly what makes them scary. A perfectly rational AI is predictable. You learn its patterns and you exploit them. An alien that sometimes does something stupid or something you didn't see coming keeps you on your toes. Sometimes even situations where you expected a certain death of your whole squad just diffuse magically out of nowhere. And instead, something completely different happens and the game swings off in a whole new direction. What still gets me in this context is that the entire game was designed from a 12-page document. That was the first design document Golub had ever written, and Microprose didn't even understand it when he handed it in. And yet the final product barely deviated from those 12 pages. A for the time super complex, layered strategy game sketched out on a dozen sheets of papers by someone who'd never written a design document before. Back in the game. In the meantime, the aliens had the audacity to terrorize Novosibirsk, the city just around the corner of our base. What an insult. I tried to down the large UFO, but it one-shot my first interceptor and the second one ran out of ammo. So we bumped some new heroes to the front of the Skyranger queue and lived off. In the Terra missions, the aliens are out to kill every civilian on sight and you're tasked to prevent just that. These scenarios usually are quite tough, chaotic, and come with inevitable collateral damage. If there's an alien with a civilian nearby, the answer is still called heavy cannon for reliability reasons. I mean, what else would we do? I don't know who keeps sending me soldiers with the marksman skills of a hammered baboon, so in the beginning we need all the splash damage we can get. After cleaning up the Terra site with more explosive weaponry, we researched some of the alien corpses we keep on ice. XCOM UFO Defense is soaked in real UFO mythology from the late 80s and early 90s, and it's fascinating how direct those references are. The sectoids, your standard grey, big-eyed, cattle-abducting starter alien, are lifted straight from UFO folklore. The Greys had been a staple of abduction reports since the early 1960s.
If what you are about to see is real, it's the most startling film footage in history. Alien autopsy, fact or fiction?
Alarium-115, the fuel source that powers all alien technology, comes directly from Bob Lazar, a guy who claimed in 1998 to have worked at Area 51, reverse engineering alien spacecraft. His claim was that element 115 had anti-gravity properties and powered the craft he worked on. Golub read Lazar's book and put it straight into the game. And in the final mission, you're storming an alien base on Mars, in a region called Sidonia. In 1976, the Viking 1 probe photographed what looked like a giant human face carved into the Martian surface there. It fed years of conspiracy theories about ancient civilizations on Mars. Later imaging with better cameras revealed it's just a hill, shadows and low resolution doing what they do. But in 1994, it was still very much alive as a conspiracy touchstone, and Golub knew exactly what he was doing putting the final mission there. What he didn't know, however, was that the game had been officially cancelled months earlier. Remember what I said at the start? That this game was cancelled without the dev team ever being told? Here's the full story. Spectrum Holobyte, the parent company that had acquired Microprose, officially ordered the project killed. 3 Microprose UK managers though held a meeting, decided to ignore the order and simply never told Julian Golub or his brother Nick. The team kept working. They had no idea. The game shipped in March 1994. Golub only found out the truth 2 decades later at a game developers conference. The guy who saved the game originally never told him. And this almost dead game went on to create a whole new genre. But before you blast off to Mars to save humankind, there's lots of work to do and tech to research. As I mentioned before, there's a certain technology threshold where you're evening out the playing field. You're building bases all over the globe, creating a worldwide observation and detection system. Also, you're not fielding rifles anymore, but your squad is a heavily armored bunch of guys armed to the teeth. They hover around thanks to alien anti-grav technology and blow holes into the roof of large UFOs just to drop grenades directly into the command center instead of boarding the UFO the hard way from ground level and working their way up. And they are accompanied by hover tanks equipped with blaster launchers that level whole buildings, which takes the rocket launcher recon to a whole new level. Everything I showed you so far only scratches the surface. There's so much more lore to find and equipment to research, and I wholeheartedly recommend playing this fantastic game. There's an open source tool called openxcom, which makes the game run on modern systems and adds a ton of quality of life features. So, if you want to give the game a go, rest assured you don't have to struggle with antique inputs to get the original experience. I swear you'll have a blast with this 33-year-old game that still shows how immersion storytelling is done properly. If you like this video, well, drop it a like, and you'll absolutely want to watch this one about another game of the same caliber. It's called Battletech and it's a masterpiece. Thanks for stopping by. Don't save scum too much, and I'll see you in the next one.